And then what happens now is that we run up to it, we can select it, we can hover over it, and we can press E. It's going to open our door. And then when it opens, it's going to wait for us to walk through it. And as soon as we end the overlap, then the door's going to close. And then we can walk up to this one, we can press E. It's going to open it. In this video, we're going to take a look at a new plugin. So it's called the actor sequence. It's really in an early version, so it's 0.1, it's beta. But the reason I'm making this is because I want Epic to know that people want it. And I think it's absolutely freaking awesome. And I've been waiting for this for years. So if you don't know, sequencer is normally a level thing. You can right click. I can't even remember where it is because I just hate using it. So cinematics, level sequence, and then dealing with this. The problem is, if you want to animate individual components, you typically need to take them into Blender, Max, Maya, Cinema 4D, Houdini, whatever you want to use for modeling, and then animate each part there, create a skeleton, and bring it in. Sometimes you just want to code that inside of Unreal, just so you've got the ability to tweak stuff. In a lot of the cases, Sequencer can do that. The problem with Sequencer is if you create a blueprint and you want to duplicate it and move it around the level and rotate it and all this, it becomes an absolute nightmare to work with. So with the actor sequence, it allows you to do exactly the same thing, except directly inside of an actor or an individual one. Hopefully on the screen right now will be a video of the end result. What we're going to do is I'm going to show the whole thing. So we're going to go up to Blender. We're going to make up a kind of sci-fi door of some form. And then we'll bring all that into Unreal. And then we'll build a little blueprint. So when we walk through to the door, it opens, plays an animation, and then closes again. So I thought we'd just do the whole thing. I do have a Blender scene set up already, just emptied that out. And the idea is we're going to set this up with a couple of little models and then go from there. So I'm just going to start with a cube. I don't really have a design in mind. The idea is to just scale this and place stuff as we need it, come up with a door. The one thing I do know is the gap between this is 2 meters by 2 meters, so basically 4 meters wide. So we'll do a door that fits in here. So if we do 2 meters, then we can do 2 meters up. So basically a cube, and that should fit in this gap. We can actually test that before we jump into Blender again. So we can see that the default cube is 1 meter by 1 meter. So if we do 2 by 2 by 2, and then we bring this up, we can see that that's going to be the right size. So we could bring this in to about 0.2. So we do 2 by 0.2 by 2. So in Blender, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to model this up. 2 meters, 0.2 by 2. There we go. That's going to be one of our doors. I'm not going to make this look all fancy or snazzy. We don't really have time for that. We don't want this to take too long. So we're going to center this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the origin to the 3D cursor just in the middle. So really our center point is here. So if we animate it, we can control which way it goes. I don't know whether it should just keep the one door. We can duplicate that, which would work actually. We can keep that in there. And then we can do a centerpiece. We'll do a cylinder, and then we'll have this as our little animated centerpiece, which goes in the middle. We can have this go through like so. We could position this a little bit higher up. This is where we can get a little bit more creative, and then we can scale this in, out, and then we could bevel that edge. Maybe make it look a little bit pretty, at least. And then Control B. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Tab, Control A, all transforms. That sets it back at the bottom. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that this one is our origin, so geometry origin to geometry. So that way, the idea is that in Unreal, when we rotate this, make it play its animation, it'll pivot around this point, and then it can be a child of the actual door as well. So we'll leave that as it is, which is cool. Make sure the rotation's reset, and then we should be able to do Control B, and then have that in like so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do smooth. Where is it? I need to be in faces, shade smooth, and then we can do some sharp edges. So mark sharp, and then there we go. Cool. So we'll have this one stick out a little bit. And then in here as well, we'll do a cube, and then this is the one that we'll see kind of lock in or rotate around. So it's basically a child of the centerpiece. So you can imagine there's a little handprint in there. You can walk up to it, you press it with your hand or something, and then this would rotate and then spin around. So we bring this in, We just want this so we can actually see it. If we had more time, we could make it look pretty cool. But for now, we're just going to speed through it. So this one is going to be our unlock section. So ALS, and then actually we'll do A and then we'll control B all the edges, which is quite nice. Inset, and then I think we do an E to extrude and then bring it in just through that way. Will work. Cool. So now we could rotate this around and it'll do that. So we need to make sure that these two are actually joined to the parent. So now it becomes one object. So if I was to rotate this around in Blender, we'd actually see it move, which is quite cool. Somebody wonders whether I should chop this in half. I'm not going to parent it to this door because we'll duplicate it and then we'll set the child in Unreal, which should work quite nicely. We will bevel these bits if it's going to be correct. So I need to make sure that our transforms are all set. Specifically the scale, so if I do Control A, we want to change the scale so it's correctly set here. That way when I bevel the edges, it actually bevels the right way around. Now we get that nice smooth edge, which can then lock in, which is pretty cool. The best part of this as well is because we're doing it through the actor blueprint, we actually get collisions, so we don't have to worry about animating collisions afterwards. We can just use the ones that come with the door. So this is going to be our SM_door center piece, and then we're going to have the SM door, SM_door, and then we can leave it as it is. Let's make this look a little bit cool. So what we're going to do is, since we're doing the whole thing, let's scale this down, and then the goal is I'm going to mirror the door afterwards. I want to make sure that I haven't inverted that. Cool. It's been a while since I've done this, so what we're going to do is do a couple of little bevels maybe. Control B in, that could be one panel. We could duplicate this, Shift D, and then we can bring this lot in. And if you can't tell, I'm making it up as we go. So we do that. And then maybe we could do something like that, which would work. I wonder if we could do, let's leave it as it is. We'll take this one, do L to select all of those, Shift D, so it's part of the same part. We take these ones, bring this down. What I could do is take that. So now we should actually be able to select this, use a modifier. I can't remember which way around this goes, whether the modifier needs to be on the door. Maybe that one? Nope, definitely the other way around. So we take the door, we had a Boolean modifier, say difference is going to be these guys. And then if we set these to hidden, we get a nice little cool cutout, which works pretty well. I'm just going to apply these. I'm not worried about destroying it or anything. And then I'm just going to set this up so we can cut the door in half, and then we can mirror it just to create some, make it the same on each side, connect. What am I doing? Connect vertex path? Yeah. I thought it was named something else. That's why I was looking for vertex path. And then what we could do is select that bit. And then if we select all these faces, we should be able to then delete them. X, delete faces. And then if we mirror this one, there we go. So now we've got our cool little snazzy door. It's a terrible door, I'm aware, but it works for exactly what we want. So now what I want to point out is the pivot points. We don't really need to worry about the pivot points overall, especially if you're animating them. But by doing it 0, 0, 0 world position, when you bring it into Unreal, it'll mean that it goes into the blueprint, the correct location, and it'll be easier to work with. So right now, this one is a bit high up, so it's off by 2 meters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center that to 0. So when we export them as different meshes, we then bring them into Unreal with the correct position, and we can position them inside the blueprint. So what I'll do is I will take this door. I don't have any plugins set up to handle this, so I'm just going to do FBX, D drive, YouTube videos today. Which one is it? What day are we? The 14th. So there, actor animation. And then in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new folder. I'm going to call this models. Cool. And then we're going to name this SM_door model. I just realized I haven't done any UVs. We won't worry about that now. So we're going to export. And then we can export this one as well. Export FBX door center. Cool. Export. And now in Unreal, we can bring these in. So I'm just going to do first person blueprints folder. Yeah, we'll bring it all into here. It'll be a little bit untidy, but it'll work. So we can bring these in. We can pretty much ignore everything in here. We can just import as it is, and it should be fine. We'll have a look. Cool. There we get those. Now we bring them in. It is double the size, which is a little bit weird. It should have been 2 by 2. Or I made it 4 by 4. What's my grid spacing? Scale 1. Did I not change metrics 1? That's weird. It's coming with ×2. Okay, we can make that work. I don't want to spend too much time fiddling around with that. Cool. So now what we can do is we can do our blueprint class, and we can set up our animation blueprint from here. So for those watching the long version on Patreon or YouTube, I'm going to just start the YouTube video from here and then kind of repeat it so I don't have to do the video twice. So, hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. In this one, we're going to cover gameplay or game animation sequences, or blueprint actor animation sequences, depending on which way I get it around. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set up these custom meshes that we've just built over in Blender. Not the best, but they're functional. And then we'll set them up so you can animate it as it is. So in Unreal, I've got a new folder and a new template for the third person or first person. I think it's the first person. And then BP animation door. So we're going to call this BP underscore door. So we've just created a new actor. And then in here, if we open it up, what we can do is we can bring in our static meshes that we have, and then we can drop those in. And we'll see that the position's a little bit strange. So I'm going to just move this cylinder up. We had it about here, little notch cut out in the door. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this mesh, so the door model, and then I'm going to mirror it on the Y. So -1, there we go. And we get our full door. At the same time, I'm going to select our root, and because I've messed up the scale of our doors, I'm just going to half it. So it brings it down a little bit. And then we can do save. So now if I bring this blueprint into our level, we get it to line up.